We were contacted by the Washington Post, I guess 2 days ago, and I didn't know it because it was buried in our public emails, which I review. I review every email periodically. I review them as much as I can, and yeah. This one, so I learned about this one because Ali Abunimah of Electronic Intifada tweeted his response to this reporter. And basically, let's pull up Ali's response, and then I'll explain what the reporter said to us, because I think it was a very similar email that we received. And the email didn't come with any questions. Okay, basically, Elizabeth Dwoskin, who signed off as Liza or Liza to us, reached out to Ali and said, I cover social media for the Washington Post, and I'm writing a piece about efforts to minimize or misdirect information about the October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel. As part of the piece, I'm noting various headlines on your service that point to evidence of Israeli deaths being caused by the Israeli army. I'm noting that many people I've spoken to who believe that the IDF was responsible for October 7th, cite the work of Electronic Intifada. So basically misrepresenting what Electronic Intifada did by claiming that or attributing to them a conspiracy theory that Israel was wholly responsible for the October 7th attacks, when actually what they were reporting, as we did at the Grayzone, was that Israeli military officials gave orders to attack Israeli civilians on October 7th if they were being held captive by Hamas militants. And we saw many Israeli civilians killed. This is confirmed. I was called a conspiracy theorist by Haaretz for reporting this, and Haaretz ultimately reported it. So Elizabeth Dwoskin reached out to me as well. And I mean, it's very revealing. The language she uses here is very revealing. She's accusing Ali and Electronic Intifada of minimizing October 7th attacks. That was the language to me, but the email was much shorter. I'd like to talk to you about your minimization of these attacks. There were no questions. Usually a reporter will supply questions and I can answer them. And they just basically left a phone number. And Ali responded. It's a great response. And
so she
Ali then go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so Max, so she didn't send you the dimensions by which you've minimized October 7th?
No, it wasn't like 1200 by 800 and I reduced it to 800 by 600.
Got it.
But I mean, you look through this reporter's social media, she is like the Silicon Valley social media reporter for the Washington Post. And you know what that means? It means pushing the imperatives of the censorship industrial complex and of the Western intelligence services. She hyped up Russiagate massively. You look at interviews with her and she's howling about literally howling about Macedonian teenagers exploiting divisions in the US to hack the brains of American citizens and spawn fake news. It's just ridiculous. But she's also a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist who's retweeting Barry Weiss. This is Daniel Denvir. If it weren't clear enough, Liza Dwoskin was planning an anti-Palestine hit piece from the emails below. Check out her timeline. Nonstop pro-Israel propaganda. Screenshot of tweets followed by excerpt from shared articles. Okay, here she is retweeting Barry Weiss on stuff we've debunked about October 7th and the whole Hamas rape propaganda that the Israeli government's pushing. And here's something Ali discovered subsequent to receiving the email, which is that when Washington Post's Liza Dwoskin was at Columbia, She denied the Nakba, claiming there was no Palestinian nation, and Palestine, with hundreds of villages and cities, was home to just a few desert Bedouins. That's who's assigned to write this article about electronic intifada in the Grayzone. A voice from the DC protest. Before the British swept in, Dwoskin writes, there was no Palestinian nation. The territory was taken from the ailing Ottoman Empire and consisted of desert Bedouins without a sense of national identity as we know it today. How ignorant do you have to be to believe that? That's like Leon Uris level propaganda. This is the person assigned to write this hit piece for the Washington Post.
Wait, Max, leave that quote up for a second. Leave that
Yeah.
quote up, because this is a common talking point from Zionists, and it really misses something important. When the British swept in, what the British did is they immediately promised the land to somebody else who was not there, which was the Jewish people.
Yeah.
There was a tiny percentage of Jews there in Palestine, but the majority were Palestinian Arabs. And yes, in the years after the British promised the land of Palestine to somebody else, you did see Palestinian nationalism grow. I mean, the line about desert Bedouins is just a straight up fabrication. But yes, when someone comes in, when you're living in a land and like it's yours, and some colonial power comes in and promises it to somebody else, you're going to develop all the more of a national identity. That's just obvious because your land is being stolen. So this idea that like there were no Palestinians until the British came along, and then all of a sudden the Palestinians like decided they wanted to be a people. No, what happened was the Palestinians realized their land was being stolen from them, and they organized around that to stop that. And of course they failed, and that's why we're in the situation we're in right now.
Right. I mean, it's just transparent Zionist propaganda. So, I mean, it's obvious EI is having an effect. We're having an effect. That's why the Washington Post came. The Washington Post did not do the investigation. They will not do the investigation that we did, which Israelis are talking about. Israelis are talking about how Israelis were killed on October 7th. This will be discussed if there's ever an independent investigation or an investigation inside Israel, if the Israeli government will ever allow it. The Washington Post won't touch it. They want to attack us for doing the work that the US media should be doing on one of the biggest scandals of this war.
Yeah.
Other than genocide, of course.
Yeah. And so what was the one mention that we see, at least that I've seen in establishment media, of the fact that Israel killed some of its own people on October 7th? It was in the New York Times. It was buried in the bottom of a New York Times article. And the Times described this Israeli tank that fired on a home that killed Israelis as some light shelling, right? It was
They was hit with light shells, like Nerf shells.
Yes. So that's the one instance where the New York Times, where establishment media in the U.S., as far as I know, broke its own oath of silence around Israel's role in killing its own people. And the Times buried it in an article at the bottom and described it as just a light shell. It's just a light shell.
Well, what that article revealed or told the U.S. media consumer was that Brigadier General Barak Hiram, who is a major figure in the Israeli military, he's being put forward as like this hero of Gaza, that he gave the order to fire on the Pessi Cohen home in Kibbutz Be'eri and kill something like 15 Israeli civilians, knowing that they were in there. And then he lied about it in interviews afterwards and blamed Hamas for killing everyone there. So it's a huge scandal. And Electronic Intifada, Ali Abu Nima and David Sheen broke this story that he lied. They put the pieces together. They did the translation, and now they're being attacked for breaking a story. Do you see how U.S. corporate media operates? They're attacking real journalists for doing real journalism because it's undermining the public relations imperatives of this apartheid state of Israel, with which Liza Dwoskin enjoys a deep affinity. So I don't know. She wanted me to talk to her. She's looking for some kind of gotcha moment or something. Let's give her a call. Let's call. This is the number that I have for Liza Dwoskin. of the Washington Post, social media reporter. I don't even know how why was this person assigned to this story? Anyway, let's talk about it, because our work really speaks for itself. But I think we have some questions for them.
You've reached Elizabeth Dwoskin's voicemail. You can leave me a message here or email
I guess you don't really want to speak to me.
Thanks and have a
Let's try one more time, because you never know. Here we go.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Is this Elizabeth Dwoskin?
May I ask who's calling?
Yeah, hi. It's Max Blumenthal from the Grayzone, and I'm here with my colleague Aaron Mate.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for calling.
Sure. Yeah. You wanted to talk about our factual journalism?
I did. I want to interview for my piece.
Yeah, I got an email from you accusing us of minimizing the atrocities on October 7th.
So I'm wondering if it's possible, because I'm about to be on another call, if we could schedule a time to speak Monday or Tuesday. Obviously won't run prior to that.
Well, I'd like to talk right now before we do that, because I am confused based on the language in your email. You are accusing us of minimizing atrocities on October 7th, but you're not. It doesn't seem like you're. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to do here and why it seems like you're planning to attack the investigative journalists who have helped expose a major scandal, us and Ali Abu Nima, which has been confirmed even by Israeli media and by Israeli military officials like Colonel Golan Vak, in which Israel killed Israeli civilians on October 7th. There were friendly fire orders. You're attacking us instead of doing the investigation yourself on this scandal. And I'm really confused about why that is.
So I definitely want to talk through everything. I don't want you to feel attacked. I want to talk you through the points in the story. I'm of course aware that there were deaths due to friendly fire. And I've read the Israeli media reports as well, some of which you cite. And yeah, let's just.
So how are we minimizing? Just tell me now, how are we minimizing atrocities by reporting these facts?
So I'm about to be on another call and you're kind of springing on me. What I appreciate doing is scheduling a time to talk so that I can hear everything that you have to say and talk you through everything. Just the way
the question is for you. No,
wait, Aaron Mate has a question. It's not all that I can't always get him here.
We didn't contact you. You contacted us. So we want to hear from you. What is your issue with us? How are we minimizing what happened on October 7th? If you believe that, since you wrote it, it should be easy to explain. So let's hear it.
So I appreciate your asking me a question. My other call is asking me questions. My other call is starting in a minute.
When is your other call over?
I don't know. It's another interview. But
I mean, no, but we need to have trust. We need to have trust before we go any further. And I see that you have minimized the Nakba of Palestinians writing for Columbia University's paper. You describe them as just a bunch of desert Bedouins. Are you a Zionist?
I'm not sure. Like,
I mean, I see you retweeting Barry Weiss, who's a major supporter of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. And I need to know, are you ideologically committed to the system of Zionism? And it's very curious that someone like that would be assigned to this story. And it's also curious to me that the Washington Post refuses to investigate the real story and hold accountable this powerful apartheid state and is instead attacking independent journalists. You are afflicting the afflicted, and comforting the powerful, as the Washington Post has traditionally done. So why should we even trust you to set up some kind of call?
I mean, that is completely up to you to do so.
Are you a Zionist?
Sir, that is completely up to you to set up a call. This isn't about any personal biases, ideologies. That's not what this.
Do you support Israel's military
conversation is
campaign in
about.
Gaza?
Excuse me, what is it? I feel like you're interrogating me, and my
Well,
other
you
call
just
is starting.
you deserve to be
Please
interrogated. It's
let
highly
me know.
inappropriate that someone who seems to have such deep affection for an apartheid state committing genocide would be assigned to this story and is attacking independent journalists who produced factual journalism on a major scandal instead of holding to account the state and military responsible for that scandal. And by the way, why is the Washington Post always minimizing genocide, the attack on the Maghazi refugee camp? It was referred to as just strikes against Hamas in the Washington Post. Where is this? You're the social media reporter. Where is the report on all of the Israeli social media posts, the TikTok posts celebrating the genocide of Gaza, mocking people in Gaza for having their water and energy turned off, the Israeli soldiers in Gaza proudly committing war crimes on TikTok, broadcasting it to the world? Have you written one story about that as the social media reporter?
So feel free to send me anything, any articles or clips that you think.
Feel free to answer the question.
Being a that you feel free to send me any articles or clips.
See, this is why nobody trusts corporate media and why they're reading Electronic Intifada and the Grayzone, because you can't even answer these questions. You can't even tell us about your own Zionism and why you're doing this hit piece.
I'm really just taken aback.
Why? I'm taken aback.
Okay, well, I apologize for being taken aback, but I feel like the next step, the natural step that anyone does when one is interviewing a story subject is for anyone who's mentioned or has a reference in a story is to talk the whole thing through, to schedule a time and talk it through. So that's all I'm saying.
You didn't even ask me in the email to schedule a time or talk it through.
So I apologize.
You could have sent questions.
Because I'm running late to another call. So I'll send a follow-up email to your email with suggesting some times. Does that work?
Do you still believe that Palestinians, that the people of Palestine were just desert Bedouins before Israel?
Okay, Liza Dwoskin of the Washington Post has hung up on us. She has said that she has another call that's so important that she can't interview or discuss this issue with her interview subjects. And she won't address her own pro-Israel sympathies, which are obviously relevant to this story. So.
Well, that's a pretty typical interaction with somebody who tries to write a hit piece on the Grayzone. We've done this many times before with people. When we call them and ask them for the evidence for their claims against us, they universally are unable to engage and oblige. And that one was no exception.
That was Liza Dwoskin. So much for that. We should do we have the Russiagate interview she gave? I don't have it in the doc, but I mean, she is such a tool of power if you look at her work. She did a 2-year investigation on how Russian propaganda was responsible for the coups in West Africa. As if the destabilization of those countries by the U.S. invasion of Libya assault on Libya wasn't actually one of the major factors, or the miserable state of their governments just selling off their resources wasn't a factor. No, it was the Russians. And she spent 2 years doing that. This is the kind of stuff that's obviously guided by Western intelligence services. She's guided by power to attack any countervailing force.
Yeah, well, this is her pinned tweet, so she's very proud of this work. The backstory of the recent string of coups in Africa is Russian disinformation. This never told spy versus spy tale with wild deets like getting people to play avatars in the real world reveals how it happens. Been working on this for 2 years. So basically, coups in Africa, all the result of the same source, the all-powerful Russian disinformation, the same way that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. Hillary Clinton's loss to Donald Trump, that was Russian disinformation too. It all comes back to Russian disinformation. And that is Elizabeth Dwoskin.
Or whoever is puppeteering Elizabeth Dwoskin. I mean, what journalist wakes up in the morning and is like, you know what? I want to write about how Russia is influencing people in West Africa to overthrow their governments. Like, who actually does that unless they're the biggest bootlicker of power? Again, like, how is it not this just titanic scandal that Israel attacked its citizens on October 7th? What, even if you want to say this was Hamas's fault because Hamas militants had taken them captive or were taking them captive or had attacked Israel, how is it not a massive scandal that we have just clear testimony of Israel shelling home after home in Kibbutz Be'eri, killing children, and that the Israeli government then goes and presents those children as Hamas victims? How is it not a scandal that people are coming out of Gaza who were abducted by Hamas, who are Israeli citizens, going to the war cabinet meetings with Netanyahu and the war chiefs and pointing their finger at them and saying, why did you try to kill me with an Apache helicopter on my way into Gaza? And why do you all keep bombing all around us? Do you want to get us killed? Well, how is that not a huge scandal? It's just something that so the only way the US media will touch it, this is always the case. Whenever our reports get into mainstream media, it's to attack us for daring to write the reports. It's like Kit Clarenberg's blockbuster reporting on, the leaked emails showing that a British intelligence cabal, including former MI5, MI6 chief Richard Dearlove, was infiltrating the British civil service and sneaking out classified documents belonging to Theresa May in order to manipulate Brexit and destroy Theresa May. This should have been a huge scandal across the UK. Instead, when The Guardian reports it, they report, we think Russia may have gotten these leaked emails. And that's the only story. And then Kit gets interrogated for daring to break open this scandal. This is all the corporate media is just protectors of power. Now we see they're protecting the authors of the worst genocide of our time, and that's Liza Dwoskin. That's her ultimate legacy. So we wanted you all to see that and know about that and hear her response to our questions and our concerns before we would talk to her. And if, I think if she had wanted to open up a frank and candid conversation, we would have been open to continuing. But
and one day we can put out a special compilation of all our favorite Grayzone live phone calls. I'm thinking of the time I think Alex Rubinstein spoke to someone from the National Endowment for Democracy and gave them a history lesson of their own organization's role in cooing foreign governments. And there was a time when I called up Mark Townsend of The Guardian after he printed that article claiming that I'm the most prolific spreader of disinformation on Syria. And of course, he couldn't offer me
classic.
one example.
Forgot about that.
We'll have a whole compilation one day.
And so you were trying to ask her right when she hung up about her comments referring to Palestinians as a bunch of desert Bedouins, and then she hung up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Before you try to write about this topic, you should understand the basic history. And what she was repeating there was just the mythical version of Palestine and the Zionist narrative that this is all just desert Bedouins inhabited this place before the Jews returned to their ancestral homeland to make the desert bloom. It's such a joke. Such a joke.
Well, I'm looking forward to the article, and actually I'm not. I know what it's going to say, and it's a lot like the articles that are we're getting attacked like every day in Haaretz and in liberal publications for publishing facts and raising serious issues with Israeli propaganda. And it's just very similar. It's like, this was inappropriate for you to do. This just violates our sensibility.
And what's interesting there is, the contrast between Israeli media and US media. Of course, Israeli media is dominated by state propagandists, but in Israeli media, there's still more critical reporting on Israel than you can find in the US. So Israeli media has reported a lot more on the fact that Israel killed some of its own people on October 7th. And Israel has correspondents like Gideon Levy and Amira Haas, who there's no contemporary for them inside the US. These are Israelis that are very critical of their occupation. Amira Haas has lived inside the occupied territories for decades. there's no comparable columnist in the U.S. media. There's not even, there's Amir Haas and Gideon Levy. There's not even one inside the U.S. The closest you can get is Peter Beinart, who occasionally writes the New York Times, but he constantly peddles to the Israeli narrative in ways that Gideon Levy and Amir Haas don't even do. So it just shows that in the U.S., it's a lot harder to report critically and just factually on Israel than even inside Israel itself.